Nobody at the Galactic Expeditionary Academy laughed when Instructor Varric said the word Deathworld. That alone told Maya Reyes that the briefing was probably going to be boring. She sat in the third row of the massive tactical auditorium, one boot resting against the floor, her arms loosely folded across her chest while a holographic planet rotated above the instructor's podium. It was an ugly planet. Violent violet storms wrapped around its equator, dark oceans churned beneath clouds that seemed permanently angry, and enormous mountain ranges cut through continents covered in dense black-green vegetation. Every few seconds, lightning flashed across the hologram. Around Maya, 37 cadets watched in silence. Some looked nervous. Others looked fascinated. A few were already checking their equipment displays. Maya simply watched. She had seen worse weather on Earth. "Cadets," Instructor Varric said, his deep voice echoing through the auditorium, "what you are looking at is VEYRA-9. Officially classified as a Class 8 extreme biosphere environment. Unofficially, among experienced expedition personnel, it has another name." The hologram zoomed closer to the surface. A gigantic six-legged creature moved between the trees. Its body was covered in overlapping plates, and its mouth opened wide enough to reveal rows of hooked teeth. "The grave garden." Someone near the back whispered, "That's ridiculous." Varric heard him. "Is it?" The hologram changed. The creature disappeared, replaced by footage of a military exploration team running through a forest. The recording ended abruptly. A red symbol appeared. "Missing." The auditorium became even quieter. Maya's expression didn't change, but she sat a little straighter. VEYRA-9 has killed trained soldiers, scientists, engineers, and survival specialists, Varric continued. It has no stable weather cycle, several native organisms are toxic to humanoid life, and its ecosystem contains multiple apex predators whose behavior remains poorly understood. Your examination begins in 72 hours. That sentence finally produced a reaction. "Wait," said Tarek beside Maya. "Our examination?" Maya glanced at him. Tarek was a Vornik, a tall insectoid species with 4 thin arms, dark reflective eyes, and a natural sensitivity to changes in temperature. He had been one of the Academy's top students in navigation and environmental mathematics. He was also, Maya had discovered during the previous month, extremely easy to frighten. "Did he say examination?" Tarek whispered. "Yes. On that planet? That's what I heard." Tarek's antennae lowered. "That's not an examination. That's attempted murder." Maya almost smiled. At the front, Varric continued explaining the mission. "You will be inserted 12 kilometers from the extraction zone. Your primary objective is survival and successful extraction. Your secondary objective is to recover a damaged emergency beacon located near the western ridge. You will have 72 hours. You will receive standard survival equipment, atmospheric filters, medical supplies, thermal shelters, water purification systems, and limited rations." A 4-armed cadet named Korin raised his hand. He was a member of the Draxan species, famous throughout the Accord for their physical strength and military discipline. "Instructor, why are we being sent there when we have simulations?" Varric looked at him. "Because simulations teach you how to respond to problems someone already predicted." He paused. VEYRA-9 will teach you what happens when nobody predicted the problem. Several cadets exchanged nervous looks. Maya understood the point immediately. On Earth, her father had taught her something similar when she was young. He had never called it military training. He called it common sense. Never assume the world will behave because you made a plan. Plans were useful. They simply weren't promises. Maya had grown up in a small town surrounded by hills and forests. She had spent childhood weekends hiking with her parents, learning to recognize animal tracks, checking weather reports, carrying extra water, and understanding the simple difference between being adventurous and being stupid. Earth had not been officially classified as a death world by the Galactic Accord. That fact still confused many aliens. Earth was not the most toxic planet in the known galaxy. It wasn't the hottest. It wasn't the coldest. It didn't have the largest predators. But Earth had something many other civilized worlds had gradually lost. Almost every part of its natural environment could hurt you if you ignored it. Rivers could drown you. Mountains could kill you. Oceans could swallow you. Weather could destroy cities. Plants could poison you. Animals could bite, sting, crush, infect, or simply outrun you. And humans had somehow looked at all of that and decided to build houses there. Maya had grown up walking through forests without armor. Sometimes, when she was young, she had even walked barefoot through the grass. It was not heroic. It was simply home. Cadet Reyes. Maya looked up. Instructor Varric was staring directly at her. Sir? You appear unusually relaxed. Maya looked around. Every cadet seemed to be watching her now. I'm listening. You were yawning. A few cadets snickered. Maya glanced at Tarek. He immediately looked away. I was tired, sir. Varric's expression remained serious. You understand that your next examination takes place on one of the most dangerous worlds in the Accord? Yes, sir. And that does not concern you? Maya thought about it for a moment. It concerns me. Varric waited. Maya added, I'm just not panicking. Quarren leaned toward the cadet beside him and whispered loudly enough for Maya to hear, humans are strange. Maya looked at him. We get that a lot. Quarren folded his arms. Your species has only recently joined the Galactic Accord. Your survival statistics on Earth are impressive, but VEYRA9 is nothing like your homeworld. Maya nodded. I know. Then why are you smiling? Maya shrugged. Because you keep calling it a death world. Quarren stared at her. It is a death world. Maya leaned back in her chair. So is Earth. The auditorium went silent. Even Instructor Varric paused. Quarren looked genuinely confused. Earth is not classified as Class 8. I know. Then why say that? Maya smiled. Because I've walked Earth barefoot. Someone laughed. It wasn't Maya. Quarren shook his head. Barefoot? Sometimes. Without protective armor? Obviously. On an uncontrolled surface? Yes. Tarek slowly turned toward her. Maya, I don't think you're helping. Maya laughed quietly. Maybe not. Varric stepped away from the podium. Cadet Reyes, survival is not a competition between planets. If you believe your experience on Earth makes you immune to VEYRA9, you will learn otherwise. Maya's smile disappeared. I don't think I'm immune to anything, sir. Her voice was calm now. Good. Varric turned back toward the class. Because that is the first lesson you will need. The briefing continued for another 40 minutes. They learned about atmospheric toxicity, magnetic interference, unstable terrain, and native organisms. They were shown recordings of previous expeditions. One team had lost communication after 6 hours. Another had reached the western ridge but never found the beacon. A third had activated an emergency extraction after a predator breached their shelter. The instructors never showed what happened to the missing personnel. They didn't need to. By the time the briefing ended, nobody was joking anymore. The cadets filed out of the auditorium toward the preparation halls. Maya walked beside Tarek while he studied the mission data on his wrist display. You really walked barefoot on Earth? He asked. Yes. Why? Grass feels nice. Tarek stared at her. That is your explanation? Do you want a scientific paper? No. I want to understand humans. Maya smiled. Good luck. They reached the equipment bay. Hundreds of crates were being prepared for the mission. Cadets checked rifles, medical packs, filters, thermal shelters, climbing equipment, emergency transmitters, and food supplies. Maya inspected her own equipment carefully. She didn't assume anything would work just because someone had tested it. She checked the power cells. Then the filter seals. Then the emergency beacon. Tarek watched her. I thought you weren't worried. Maya looked at him. I'm not worried. She tightened a strap. I'm preparing. That answer stayed with Tarek longer than he expected. 3 days later, the cadets assembled inside the launch hangar. Beyond the enormous doors waited the expedition shuttle that would carry them to VEYRA9. Maya stood among the others wearing standard Academy survival armor. It wasn't heavy, but it was reinforced against environmental hazards. She checked her gloves one final time. Tarek stood beside her, visibly nervous. Still not afraid? He asked. Maya looked through the hangar windows at the stars. Of course I am. Tarek blinked. You are? Maya nodded. Being afraid is useful. Then why did you say you weren't worried? Because worry and preparation are different things. The boarding signal sounded. Cadets moved toward the shuttle. As Maya stepped aboard, she looked back at the academy one last time. She thought about Earth, about forests, rain, mountains, cold mornings, mud between her toes. Her father's voice telling her to watch the clouds before starting a hike. Her mother's voice reminding her that courage didn't mean doing something stupid. Then the shuttle doors closed. The engines began to roar. Tarek strapped himself into the seat beside her. Maya? Yeah? What happens if VEYRA9 really is as dangerous as they say? Maya looked at the stars disappearing beyond the shuttle's window. Then we respect it. And if respecting it isn't enough? Maya's expression became serious. Then we learn faster. The shuttle lifted from the hangar. Below them, the Galactic Expeditionary Academy became smaller and smaller until it disappeared beneath the clouds. Ahead waited VEYRA-9, a planet the galaxy had named a death world because too many beings had tried to survive it by force. Maya rested her head against the seat and closed her eyes. She wasn't fearless. She wasn't invincible. And she certainly wasn't planning to walk barefoot on VEYRA-9. But she had grown up on Earth. And Earth had taught humans one lesson better than almost anything else in the galaxy. You didn't survive a dangerous world by proving you were stronger than it. You survived by paying attention. The shuttle crossed into VEYRA-9's upper atmosphere at 6:42 ship time, and within 30 seconds, every cadet understood why the planet had earned its reputation. The smooth vibration of the shuttle suddenly became a violent shaking that rattled the seats and made loose equipment tremble inside its restraints. Warning lights flashed along the ceiling. The artificial gravity fluctuated for 3 uncomfortable seconds before stabilizing again. Tarek gripped the sides of his seat with all 4 hands. That wasn't in the simulation. Maya tightened her harness. No. Another impact rocked the shuttle. Neither was that. Across the cabin, Corin looked toward the forward display. The planet's surface was barely visible through enormous clouds of dark violet and gray. Lightning flashed repeatedly beneath them, illuminating forests, mountains, and vast stretches of black water. "Pilot," Corin called, "what is happening?" The pilot's voice came over the cabin speakers. "Atmospheric turbulence. Nothing critical." The shuttle shook again. "Correction. Turbulence is now critical." Several cadets exchanged alarmed looks. Maya watched the flight display instead of the clouds. The original landing coordinates were marked in blue. A second warning symbol had appeared beside them. "We're changing course," she said. Tarek looked at her. "How do you know?" The navigation marker moved. He looked down at his own display. "Oh." A deep metallic groan traveled through the shuttle. Then the pilot spoke again. "Cadets, brace for emergency descent." "Emergency?" Tarek said. "He just said emergency." Maya grabbed the seat harness. "I heard him. You don't sound worried." "I am." "You don't look worried." Maya looked at him. "Do you want me to scream?" "No." "Then let me concentrate." The shuttle dropped suddenly. Several cadets shouted as their stomachs seemed to remain somewhere above them. Maya felt the harness cut into her shoulders as the craft plunged through the storm layer. The windows disappeared behind sheets of rain. Lightning struck nearby, turning the entire cabin white for an instant. The pilot fought the controls while the navigation computer recalculated the landing zone. "Original site is unusable," the pilot announced. "Surface winds have exceeded safe landing limits." Instructor Varrick's voice came through the intercom. "Alternative site? 3 kilometers east. Flat terrain. Vegetation density moderate." Varrick hesitated. "Take it." The shuttle descended lower. Maya looked through the side window. For a moment, she saw the ground clearly. It was not flat. Not really. There were hills hidden beneath the vegetation, and several dark channels cutting through the terrain. "Instructor," she said into the cabin communicator. "Yes, Reyes? The alternate site has water channels." "I know." "No, sir. I mean they're moving." Varrick looked toward the pilot. "Can you confirm?" The pilot adjusted the sensors. "She's right. There is surface runoff across the landing area." "How much?" "Increasing rapidly." Maya looked at the clouds. "Then land uphill." Varrick turned toward her through the cabin. "Why?" "Because the rain is getting heavier." Before Varrick could respond, the shuttle dropped again. The pilot made the decision himself. Changing landing approach. The engines screamed. The shuttle tilted, passed over a ridge, and slammed onto a rocky slope. The impact threw everyone against their restraints. Something broke loose behind Maya and crashed into the floor. Then the shuttle skidded for several meters before finally stopping. For several seconds, nobody moved. Maya released her harness. "Everyone alive?" Corin asked. One by one, voices answered. "Alive. Yes. I'm fine." Tarek lifted one of his arms. "Mostly alive." Maya laughed despite herself. The rear hatch opened, and warm, wet air rushed into the cabin. It smelled of soil, vegetation, and something sharp that Maya couldn't identify. The cadets stepped outside carefully. VEYRA-9 was nothing like the holographic images. The forest seemed almost impossibly dense. Tall trees rose 50 meters into the air, their trunks covered with layered bark that shimmered faintly beneath the rain. Broad leaves formed overlapping canopies overhead, turning daylight into green darkness. Small insects moved across the ground, some no larger than a human finger and others nearly the size of a hand. Somewhere far away, something made a deep clicking sound. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Quarren finally said, "It is worse in person." "Yes," Maya agreed. Varric activated the mission display. "Listen carefully. The shuttle cannot remain here. The storm is destabilizing the landing zone. We have approximately 20 minutes before we must move to higher ground." Cadets immediately began unloading equipment. Maya grabbed 2 supply cases and carried them toward the ridge. Tarek followed with a medical pack. "Where are we going?" he asked. "Higher." "How high?" "Enough that water can't reach us." "That's not a measurement. It's the best one I have." They climbed for nearly 10 minutes before finding a relatively level area beneath a massive rock formation. Varric ordered the temporary shelter deployed. The cadets worked quickly. Everyone had trained for this. Everyone had practiced deploying shelters under simulated rain, wind, and low visibility. But simulations had never included mud that moved beneath their boots. Quarren's foot slipped and he dropped one of the equipment cases. "Careful," Maya shouted. He recovered his balance. "I know." Maya looked at the ground. "Do you?" Quarren frowned. "What does that mean?" Maya pointed toward the mud. "It's flowing." He looked down. A thin stream of water was moving beneath the surface, carrying small pieces of soil downhill. "It's just runoff. It's getting faster." Varric overheard her. "Move the shelter another 10 meters uphill." Quarren stared at her. "Based on what?" Maya pointed toward the trees. "Those." The leaves of several low plants were beginning to fold inward. "Why does that matter?" "I don't know yet." Varric didn't waste time. "Move it." They shifted the shelter. 5 minutes later, a small section of the original ground collapsed into a shallow channel. Nobody argued with Maya after that. Once the shelter was secured, Varric gathered the cadets around the map. "Our original insertion point is 600 meters west. The extraction zone is 12 kilometers south." He highlighted a western ridge. "The emergency beacon is here. We will travel in formation, avoid unnecessary contact with native organisms, and conserve water." Quarren raised a hand. "How do we know which organisms are dangerous?" Varric answered honestly. "We don't." That sentence was followed by silence. Maya studied the surrounding forest. There were signs of life everywhere. Insects moved through the leaves. Small animals appeared and disappeared between roots. Birds, or something that resembled birds, called from the canopy. But there was one thing Maya noticed. "Instructor." Varric looked at her. "Yes?" "The animals are avoiding that stream." Everyone looked toward the water. A narrow channel ran through the forest, clear enough to see the stones beneath it. "It's probably contaminated," Varric said. Maya nodded. "Probably." Quarren approached the edge. "We can scan it." He activated his environmental scanner. The device displayed normal chemical readings. "Water is safe." Maya didn't move. "Something's wrong." Quarren looked annoyed. "The scanner says it's safe. Then the scanner says something I don't understand." Tarek crouched beside Maya. "What are you seeing?" She pointed across the stream. Several small 6-legged creatures were drinking from a shallow pool connected to the waterway. Yet none of them approached the center of the stream. "Maybe they just prefer shallow water," Tarek suggested. Maya nodded. "Maybe." She picked up a long branch from the ground. Quarren watched her. "What are you doing?" "Testing a guess." She tossed the branch into the middle of the stream. For 5 seconds, nothing happened. Quarren folded his arms. "Satisfied?" Maya waited. "Not yet." 10 seconds passed. Then the water exploded. Something pale and incredibly fast shot upward, wrapping around the branch with a muscular body before dragging it beneath the surface. Several cadets raised their weapons. The water settled again. Tarek's antennae stood straight. "What was that?" Maya slowly stepped backward. "I don't know." Quarren looked at the stream. "You knew something was there." "I suspected." "Why didn't you just say that?" Maya looked at him. "Because suspicion isn't certainty." Varric nodded slowly. "Good distinction." They changed their route and crossed the stream farther upstream where the water was shallow and spread over exposed rock. Even there, Maya insisted they test every step before committing their weight. The process took almost 20 minutes. Nobody complained. Not after seeing what had been waiting beneath the water. By late afternoon, the storm intensified. Rain struck the forest canopy so hard that it sounded like continuous static. The cadets activated their environmental shields and continued moving toward the western ridge. Visibility dropped. The forest became a maze of trunks, vines, rocks, and streams. Maya kept checking the direction of the wind. Tarek noticed. "Why do you keep looking up?" "Cloud movement. We can't see the clouds." "Exactly." He stared at her. "That doesn't make sense." Maya pointed toward the canopy. "The leaves are moving differently on the left side." Tarek watched carefully. "So? Wind is changing." Before he could ask another question, Varric stopped the formation. Everyone freeze. A low sound had come from somewhere ahead. It wasn't a roar. It was more like a deep vibration, almost too low to hear. The forest became silent. No insects. No birds. Nothing. Quarren slowly raised his weapon. Maya felt the hairs on her arms rise beneath her suit. Something was nearby. She couldn't see it. She didn't know what it was. That frightened her more than the predator in the stream. Tarek whispered, "Maya?" She raised one finger to her lips. The sound came again. This time it was closer. A branch cracked somewhere beyond the trees. Then another. Something large was moving through the forest. Varric signaled the cadets to remain still. Maya looked toward the direction of the sound. The vegetation moved. For one brief second, she saw a shape between the trees. It was enormous. More than 4 meters long. Covered in dark plates. 6 legs pressed into the mud. Then it disappeared into the forest. Nobody fired. Nobody moved. After nearly a minute, the sound faded into the distance. Tarek finally whispered, "Was that one of the predators from the briefing?" Maya shook her head. "I don't know." Quarren looked at her. "You really don't know?" Maya met his eyes. "No." For the first time since arriving on VEYRA-9, she looked genuinely unsettled. Varric ordered the group to move again, but they had barely taken 20 steps when Maya stopped. She looked back toward the forest. "Instructor." "What?" "That creature wasn't following us." Varric waited. "Then why did it stop?" Maya looked into the darkness between the trees. "I don't think it stopped." A deep vibration passed through the ground beneath their boots. Maya's expression changed. "I think it started watching." The vibration beneath their boots lasted only 3 seconds, but those 3 seconds were enough to change the mood of the entire expedition. Nobody spoke as the forest settled around them again. The rain continued falling through the canopy, but the sound seemed strangely distant now. Instructor Varric raised one hand and activated the team's short-range scanners. "All units, environmental sweep." One by one, the cadets checked their displays. Nothing appeared. No large organism. No heat signature. No movement within 20 meters. Quarren looked toward Maya. "Your scanner says nothing too." Maya glanced at her display. "Yes. Then perhaps you were wrong." Maya looked at the trees. "Maybe." Quarren lowered his weapon. "You don't sound convinced." "I'm not." Varric stepped between them. "Enough. We continue to the ridge. Stay in formation." The cadets moved forward, but they were no longer walking casually. Every step was deliberate. The forest had become darker as evening approached, and the rain had transformed the ground into a slippery mixture of mud and broken vegetation. Maya kept looking around, trying to understand the strange silence. The creature was gone, yet something about its presence remained in her mind. On Earth, her father had taught her never to focus only on what she could see. Sometimes the absence of something was more important. Birds stopped singing when predators approached. Insects disappeared when conditions changed. Small animals abandoned feeding areas before larger dangers arrived. Nature often gave warnings, but only to those who paid attention. Maya suddenly stopped. "Instructor." Varric turned. "What?" "Listen." Everyone became still. Rain, wind, their own breathing, nothing else. Maya looked toward the canopy. "There are no insects." Tarek glanced around. "Maybe they don't come out during rain." "Some do." "How do you know?" "Because I've spent enough time outside." Quarren sighed. "We cannot stop every 5 minutes because something reminds you of Earth." Maya looked at him. "Then don't stop." She pointed ahead. "Just don't walk there." Everyone followed her finger. A narrow strip of ground appeared perfectly dry beneath the trees. It looked like an easy route through the forest. Quarren started toward it. "Wait," Maya said. "Why?" "Because nothing is growing there." He stopped. She was right. On both sides, thick vegetation covered every available patch of soil. But the strip ahead was bare. No grass. No moss. No small plants. Nothing. Varric approached carefully. Could be toxic soil. Maya nodded. Could be. Then we'll go around. The group took a longer route. 10 minutes later, the ground they had avoided collapsed with a wet cracking sound. A sinkhole opened beneath the vegetation, revealing a deep hollow filled with dark water. Tarek stared into it. How deep? Maya shook her head. I don't know. Corin looked at her. You saved us again. Maya shook her head. The ground did. I just noticed it. Varric heard the exchange but said nothing. They continued until they reached the western ridge. According to their map, the emergency beacon should have been visible from there. It wasn't. Varric checked the coordinates. The ridge has shifted. Corin frowned. Ridges don't shift. This one did. Maya looked at the terrain. Landslide. Varric nodded. Recent. The emergency beacon was somewhere below them. The mission had already become more complicated than planned, but they still had 70 hours left. Varric ordered the cadets to establish a temporary camp. They worked until darkness settled over the forest. Thermal shelters were deployed beneath a rocky overhang. Water purification systems were activated. The team inventory showed only minor losses from the landing, which was fortunate. Food supplies were intact. Medical equipment was intact. Communication systems were functional, although atmospheric interference was increasing. For the first time since landing, everyone began to relax. Maya didn't. She sat near the edge of the shelter, staring into the darkness. Tarek joined her. You aren't eating. Not hungry. That's a lie. Maya smiled faintly. Yes. Tarek looked toward the forest. Do you think that creature is still nearby? Probably. Why? Because we are still here. Tarek's eyes widened. That is not comforting. I wasn't trying to comfort you. He sighed. You're terrible at reassurance. I'm good at honesty. Before Tarek could respond, a distant crack echoed through the forest. Everyone in the shelter froze. Another crack followed. Then another. Something was moving between the trees. Corin stood and reached for his weapon. Varric raised his hand. No firing unless ordered. The sound approached. Maya listened carefully. The steps were heavy but uneven. Whatever it wasn't moving like the creature they had seen earlier. Tarek whispered, maybe it's another animal. Maya nodded. Maybe. A shadow passed between the trees. Then another. Suddenly, something slammed into the outer perimeter sensor. The alarm screamed. Cadets scrambled to their feet. Corin activated his rifle. Target. The sensor showed nothing. I don't have a lock, he shouted. Another impact hit the opposite side. The shelter shook. Everyone inside. Varric ordered. Maya grabbed Tarek's arm. Move. The cadets crowded into the central shelter while the outer barrier flickered. Something struck it again. The energy field bent inward. How strong is that thing? Corin shouted. I don't know. Varric answered. Then shoot it. Corin fired toward the trees. The weapon's blue energy bolt disappeared into the darkness. There was a brief flash. Then silence. Maya's heart was pounding. She hated this part. On Earth, fear usually came with information. You could hear a bear. You could see a storm. You could watch a river rise. Here, the darkness hid everything. Suddenly the ground beneath them trembled. A heavy impact struck the shelter from below. Cadets screamed as the floor lifted. Maya fell sideways. Tarek crashed against a support beam. Then the ground gave way. The shelter tilted sharply as wet soil collapsed beneath it. Move uphill, Maya shouted. Now. The cadets scrambled out through the upper side. Varric pulled two injured cadets clear as the shelter slid several meters downhill. Equipment cases tumbled into the darkness. Maya reached for Tarek just as he slipped. She caught his arm. I've got you. My leg, he shouted. His foot was trapped beneath a metal support. Maya tried to pull him free, but the support wouldn't move. Corin rushed toward them. I'll lift it. Wait, Maya shouted. The ground is unstable. He's trapped. I know. Corin grabbed the metal frame anyway. He pulled with all four arms. The frame shifted. The earth beneath them cracked. Maya looked down. A thin line had appeared in the soil. Corin, stop. He released the frame. Then what? Maya looked around. Their emergency equipment was scattered across the slope. One of the support poles had landed nearby. She grabbed it. We use leverage. Corin understood. He positioned the pole beneath the frame while Maya and two others pushed from the opposite side. On three, she said. 1, 2, 3. The support lifted just enough. Tarek pulled his leg free. Maya dragged him uphill. Behind them, the ground collapsed again. The remaining shelter slid into the darkness. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Their main camp was gone. Their thermal shelters were destroyed. Several food containers had disappeared into the mud. Their outer sensors were dead. Corin looked at the wreckage below. We lost half our equipment. Varric checked the mission inventory. Food loss approximately 30%. 2 thermal shelters destroyed. 4 power cells lost. Communications remain functional. Maya looked at Tarek. Can you stand? He tried. Pain crossed his face. Yes. He took one step and nearly fell. No. Maya examined his leg. There was a deep cut along the side of his lower limb. It wasn't broken, but the wound was bleeding heavily. We need the medical kit. Corin pointed downhill. It's in the wreckage. Maya stared at the slope. Rainwater was already filling the lower ground. Then we go down. Varric shook his head. Too dangerous. If we leave the medical supplies there, Tarek may lose too much blood. Varric hesitated. I'll go. Maya looked at him. No, sir. You stay with the group. That's an order. Then give me permission to disobey it. Corin almost laughed despite the situation. Varric stared at Maya for several seconds. Finally he said, 5 minutes. No longer. Maya nodded. She and Corin descended the slope carefully. The wreckage was scattered across the mud. They found the medical case beneath a broken equipment frame. Corin lifted it while Maya searched for additional supplies. Suddenly she heard something. Stop. Corin froze. What? Maya pointed toward the forest. There. A faint clicking sound came from the darkness. Then another. Corin raised his weapon. Predator? Maya shook her head. I don't know. The clicking became louder. Maya looked at the mud around them. Small ripples were forming in a puddle. Not from rain. Something beneath the ground was moving. Corin, she whispered, don't run. Why? Because I don't think it's chasing us. The earth behind them bulged upward. Maya's breathing stopped. A dark shape pushed through the mud and then disappeared again. Corin tightened his grip on his weapon. What was that? Maya stared at the disturbed soil. I don't know. The ground shook once more. Then something slammed into the hillside below them, sending mud and water downhill. Run! Maya shouted. This time there was no argument. They sprinted uphill with the medical case between them. Behind them, the earth continued to move. By the time they reached the others, the forest had become a wall of darkness and rain. Varric looked at Maya. What happened? Maya handed him the medical case. Something is moving underground. Corin added, and I don't think it's the creature we saw earlier. Varric looked toward the slope. The entire group listened. Beneath the rain came a deep, distant vibration. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Whatever was underneath them was moving closer. Maya looked at the exhausted cadets, the damaged equipment, and the injured Tarek. They had been on VEYRA-9 for less than 12 hours. Already, their original plan was falling apart. She took a slow breath. We need to move. Varric looked at her. Where? Maya looked toward the higher ridge. Away from whatever is coming. Corin stared into the darkness. And if it follows us? Maya tightened the strap on her survival pack. Then we figure out why. They moved uphill before sunrise, carrying whatever equipment had survived the night. Nobody complained anymore. The lesson had become painfully clear. On VEYRA-9, every unnecessary sound, every careless step, and every assumption could become a problem. Tarek leaned heavily on Maya as they climbed. His injured leg was wrapped tightly, but the wound had begun to swell. Instructor Varric walked behind them, repeatedly checking the scanner. The underground movement has stopped, he said. Maya glanced back. For how long? 23 minutes. Then we should keep moving. Corin looked at her. You think it's waiting? I don't know. You say that a lot. Maya adjusted Tarek's arm over her shoulder. Because I don't know a lot. Corin almost smiled. At least you're honest. They reached the top of the ridge just after dawn. The rain had weakened, revealing a strange landscape below them. The forest stretched for kilometers, broken by streams, rocky valleys, and enormous patches of dark vegetation. In the distance, lightning still flickered inside the clouds. Varric unfolded the damaged mission map. The emergency beacon should be approximately 4 kilometers south. Corin pointed toward the valley. Then we go there. Maya studied the terrain. Not directly. Why? The valley floor is flooded. Corin looked again. I don't see it. Maya pointed toward the trees. The tops are visible above the water. Varric zoomed the map. She was right. A section of the valley had become a wide brown lake. We'll take the eastern slope, Varric decided. The group began moving along the ridge. Progress was painfully slow because of Tariq's injury and the unstable terrain. Around midday, they found a narrow cave beneath a rock shelf. It offered temporary shelter from the rain, but Maya refused to enter immediately. She examined the entrance, then the ground around it. What are you looking for? Tariq asked. Tracks. Do you see any? Yes. Maya pointed toward several shallow marks in the mud. Something has been using this entrance. Quarren examined them. Could be small animals. Maya nodded. Could be. Varric checked his scanner. No life signs. Maya still didn't enter. Then we'll rest outside. Quarren sighed. We need shelter. And we don't know what's inside. Varric made the decision. We'll remain at the entrance. 10 minutes. Everyone settled near the rock shelf without going deeper. 10 minutes later, they heard movement inside the cave. Something scraped against stone. Quarren immediately raised his weapon. A small creature emerged, carrying what looked like a piece of bone. It stared at them, then disappeared into the vegetation. Tariq exhaled. That was it? Maya smiled. Probably not. The cave suddenly released a deep, unpleasant smell. Everyone backed away. Varric stared at Maya. Good call. They continued. By afternoon, the group reached a narrow canyon. The walls were steep, but the route appeared passable. Quarren looked at the mission map. The beacon is on the other side. Maya examined the rocks. We shouldn't cross here. Why? The wall is wet. Everything is wet. Not like that. She pointed to a dark line running across the stone. Water was slowly seeping through it. Pressure behind the rock. Varric nodded. We'll find another route. They moved along the canyon edge until they discovered a fallen tree forming a natural bridge. It looked unstable, but it was their only reasonable option. Quarren crossed first. The trunk held. Maya followed with Tariq. Halfway across, the tree shifted. Tariq panicked. Maya. She grabbed his harness. Don't move. It's breaking. I know. What do we do? Maya looked toward the opposite bank. Slowly. Quarren reached back. Give me his hand. Tariq stretched toward him. Maya kept her grip until Quarren secured Tariq's arm. Now move, Maya said. They crossed one at a time. The final cadet reached safety just as the tree slipped into the canyon below. Everyone stared at it. Quarren looked at Maya. How do you keep noticing these things? Maya shook her head. I don't always. She looked at the canyon. That's why I don't trust myself enough to stop being careful. They continued toward the beacon. By evening, the group reached a forest unlike anything they had seen before. The trees were shorter, but their roots rose from the ground like enormous ribs. Strange blue fungi covered the rocks. The air was warmer here. Their scanners showed high biological activity. Varric looked at the map. The beacon is less than 1 kilometer ahead. They moved cautiously. Then Maya noticed something strange. The small animals were running. Not toward them. Away from them. Stop. Everyone froze. What now? Quarren asked. Maya pointed toward the forest. Look. Dozens of small creatures were moving through the undergrowth. Birds lifted from the trees. Even insects seemed to be fleeing. Tariq whispered, "What's chasing them?" Maya stared into the forest. Something bigger. A low vibration rolled through the ground. This time there was no doubt. The thing from beneath the earth was coming. Varric checked his scanner. Nothing. It doesn't matter, Maya said. Move. They ran. The vibration followed them. The ground trembled harder. A crack opened behind the group. Quarren stumbled but recovered. It's following us. Maya looked toward the rocky wall ahead. There, a narrow passage appeared between two cliffs. Inside, the cadets rushed through. The passage was barely wide enough for 2 people. They reached the other side just as the ground erupted behind them. The creature emerged. It was enormous. Pale armor covered its body, and its circular mouth opened and closed as it searched the air. Several cadets raised their weapons. Varric shouted, "Hold fire." Quarren stared at the creature. Why? Maya answered before Varric could. Because we don't know what shooting it will do. The creature slammed its body against the rocks. The cliff shook. Dust fell from above. Tariq cried out. It's going to break through. Maya looked at the creature, then at the passage. No. Quarren looked at her. No, it doesn't want us. It's chasing us. Look at its head. The creature wasn't facing the cadets. It was pressing its mouth against the ground. Maya suddenly understood. It's hunting something else. Varric checked the scanner again. Nothing nearby. Maya crouched and touched the rock. She felt a faint vibration. There is. A second vibration came from beneath them. The creature reacted immediately, turning away from the group. Then the ground split open. Something smaller and faster shot through the earth. The enormous predator struck it. The two organisms collided in a violent struggle beneath the trees. The cadets watched in stunned silence. Maya pulled them farther back. "Stay away," Corin whispered. "What are they?" "I don't know. You never know anything." Maya looked at him. "And you're still alive." He couldn't argue with that. The fight lasted less than a minute. The smaller creature disappeared underground. The larger predator followed. Then everything went silent. Varric finally spoke. "The ecosystem is more complex than the Academy's data suggested." Maya nodded. "That's the problem with maps." "What problem?" "They show where things are." She looked into the forest. "Not why." The group continued toward the beacon, but their relief was short-lived. They found the emergency beacon half buried beneath roots. Corin cleared the soil while Varric checked the system. Power core damaged. Maya looked at the unit. "Can we repair it?" Varric opened the casing. "Maybe." The group worked for nearly an hour. They replaced a damaged connector and rerouted power from one of the remaining cells. Finally, the beacon came alive. A signal appeared on their displays. Everyone cheered. Then the ground vibrated again. Maya's smile disappeared. "Turn it off." Varric looked at her. "What? Turn it off. We need the signal." "I know." She pointed toward the forest. "And so does everything else." The beacon transmitted for another 10 seconds before Varric shut it down. Corin looked confused. The signal was already sent. Varric nodded. "The rescue team has our coordinates." Maya looked toward the dark trees. "Then we move before anything follows the signal." Tarek leaned against her. "How much farther?" Varric checked the map. 6 kilometers to the secondary extraction zone. Maya looked at the sky. Clouds were gathering again. "We won't make it before dark." Corin frowned. "Then what?" Maya tightened the strap on her pack. "We find somewhere safe." A distant roar rolled across the forest. This time, the cadets didn't raise their weapons. They simply listened. Maya looked into the darkness. "And we hope it isn't looking for us." They began moving again. Behind them, deep beneath the forest floor, something enormous shifted through the earth. The beacon was silent. The forest was quiet. But somewhere in the darkness, a predator had learned that something unfamiliar had entered its territory. And Maya knew one thing for certain. Their real survival test had only just begun. The second extraction route was 6 kilometers away, but after what they had experienced on VEYRA-9, nobody believed 6 kilometers would be easy. The sky had darkened again, and distant lightning illuminated the clouds with brief flashes of violet. The cadets moved through the forest in a tight formation, conserving their remaining energy. Tarek limped between Maya and Corin, supported by a makeshift brace. Every few minutes, Maya checked his condition. "How's the leg?" she asked. "Painful." "That's not a medical measurement." Tarek forced a smile. "Then I'd say 6 out of 10. Getting worse?" "Maybe 7. Maya nodded. "Tell me if it reaches 8. "What happens at 8? "We stop." Tarek looked at her. "And if we're being chased?" Maya looked ahead. "Then we'll figure that out when it happens." Instructor Varric walked behind them, studying the damaged communications unit. "We have a message," he announced. Everyone stopped. "From the Academy?" Corin asked. "Yes." Varric activated the transmission. Static filled the air before a distorted voice emerged. "Expedition Team 7, this is Academy Control. Your beacon signal has been received. Due to atmospheric instability, extraction window delayed approximately 8 hours. Repeat, extraction delayed 8 hours." The transmission ended. Nobody spoke. 8 hours. They had enough food for perhaps 6. Their water reserves were worse. Maya looked at the remaining supplies. "How much water?" Varric checked. 26 liters. Corin calculated quickly. "That's enough if we ration." Maya shook her head. "Not if the temperature rises." "It won't." Maya looked at the sky. "It might." Tarek frowned. "Why?" She pointed toward the clouds. "The storm is moving away." Varric studied the sky. "She's right." "So?" Corin asked. Maya answered quietly. "After the storm, it will get hotter." The group continued until they reached a narrow valley. The ground there was covered in thick moss-like vegetation. The scanners showed no immediate danger. They stopped to rest. Tarek lowered himself against a rock. Maya examined his leg again. The swelling had increased. "You need treatment." "We have medicine." "Not enough." Varric looked at the medical inventory. We have one anti-inflammatory dose. Maya shook her head. Save it for infection or severe swelling. Corin frowned. He needs it now. He needs to keep walking more than he needs pain relief. Tarek looked between them. She's right. Corin looked annoyed. I didn't ask you. Tarek smiled weakly. You should have. They rested for 15 minutes before continuing. Then Maya noticed something unusual. The moss beneath their feet was warm. She crouched and touched it through her glove. Don't step there. Corin stopped. Why? The ground is warm. The planet is warm. Not like this. She scanned the area. A faint heat pattern appeared beneath the moss. Varric examined the readings. Geothermal activity. Maya nodded. We need to move. They left the valley just before a section of ground erupted with hot steam. The blast wasn't large, but it was enough to remind everyone how little control they had over their environment. They climbed toward higher ground again. As evening approached, their supplies became a growing concern. We have 12 liters, Varric announced. Corin stared at the container. That's impossible. We lost another 14 when the pack ruptured. Maya looked at the damaged container. How long until extraction? 7 hours. Corin calculated. Then we need to reduce consumption. Maya nodded. No unnecessary movement. They reached a rocky plateau shortly after sunset. It provided a clear view of the surrounding terrain, but very little protection. Varric decided they would remain there until morning. Maya wasn't convinced. We shouldn't stay in the open. We need visibility for the rescue shuttle. And predators need visibility too. Varric looked at her. Suggestions? Maya scanned the plateau. There's a narrow rock shelf beneath us. Too small. For the whole team. Maya pointed toward a series of large boulders. But we can use those to create a defensive position. Varric considered it. Do it. The cadets moved the remaining equipment into position. They used emergency barriers to create a small protected area between the rocks. It wasn't comfortable, but it was safer than standing exposed on the plateau. Hours passed. The temperature dropped. Everyone became quiet. Maya sat near Tarek, who was asleep. Corin remained awake beside her. You really aren't scared? He asked. Maya looked at him. I am. You hide it well. No, I just have things to do. Corin was silent for a moment. On my homeworld, fear is considered weakness. Maya shook her head. That's dangerous. Why? Because fear is information. Corin looked confused. Information? If you're afraid of something, you should ask why. She pointed toward the darkness. If you're afraid because you heard something, listen again. If you're afraid because you see danger, understand it. If you're afraid because you don't know what is happening, don't pretend you do. Corin stared at her. Your people think differently. Sometimes. A sudden sound came from the forest. Both cadets froze. Something had entered the plateau. Maya slowly raised her hand. Corin reached for his weapon. The sound came again. A clicking noise. Maya recognized it. Don't fire. Why? It's the small creatures. Several tiny animals emerged from the darkness. They moved quickly across the rocks, ignoring the cadets. Then Maya noticed something strange. They were running toward the same direction. Away from the forest. She woke Varric. Sir. He opened his eyes. What is it? The animals are fleeing again. Varric sat up. From what? Maya didn't answer. A distant vibration traveled through the rock beneath them. Corin whispered, not again. The vibration stopped. Then the ground beneath the plateau shifted. The defensive barrier collapsed. Cadets scrambled backward. Move, Varric shouted. A crack opened across the rocks. Maya grabbed Tarek before he fell. Corin pulled another cadet to safety. The plateau was breaking apart. Get to the lower shelf. Varric ordered. They moved quickly, but the terrain gave way behind them. A section of rock crashed into the valley. Maya looked down. Something was moving beneath the rubble. It's coming. Corin raised his weapon. This time I'm shooting. Maya grabbed his arm. Wait. Why? Because look. She pointed toward the lower valley. The enormous predator was not approaching them. It was moving away. Something else was following it. A series of smaller creatures poured from the forest, fleeing in panic. The larger predator suddenly disappeared into the darkness. Then a massive shadow crossed the valley. Nobody could identify it. It was too far away. Too large. Varric whispered, what is that? Maya shook her head. I don't know. The shadow vanished. The forest became silent. Corin lowered his weapon. I don't think I want to know. Maya nodded. Neither do I. They spent the next hour moving toward a narrow canyon that appeared safer. The path was difficult, but they had no choice. When they reached the canyon entrance, their communication system suddenly activated. Expedition Team 7, this is Rescue Command. We have your position. Extraction in approximately 5 hours. Relief spread through the group. Tarek smiled. 5 hours. Maya looked at him. Don't celebrate yet. Why not? Because we're still here. They entered the canyon. The walls protected them from the wind, and for the first time in hours, the group felt some hope. But the canyon had one problem. There was only one entrance and one exit. Maya noticed that immediately. We shouldn't stay here. Varric looked at her. Why? If something enters, we have nowhere to go. Then we keep moving. They continued through the canyon. Halfway through, Maya saw a series of deep marks in the stone. She crouched beside them. Corin looked over her shoulder. What made those? Something with claws. How old? Maya touched the edge. Recent. Varric looked toward the canyon exit. Keep moving. They walked faster. Suddenly, Tarek stumbled. Maya caught him. I'm fine. No, you're not. His face had gone pale. Varric checked his medical scanner. His blood loss is increasing. Maya looked at the remaining supplies. We need to stop it. We have no surgical equipment. Then we improvise. Maya removed a strip from her emergency kit. She tightened the pressure dressing while Tarek grimaced. Sorry. You always say that when you're about to hurt me. Because I am. Tarek laughed weakly. At least you're honest. They reached the canyon exit just before dawn. Beyond it was a wide open plain. The extraction zone was visible in the distance. Only 2 kilometers remained. Corin smiled. We made it. Maya looked at the plain. No. What? She pointed. We haven't. The ground ahead was covered with hundreds of small holes. Fresh ones. Too many to count. Varric scanned the area. Life signs everywhere. Corin raised his weapon. Then we go around. Maya shook her head. Look at the holes. The creatures were not moving randomly. Their tunnels formed a pattern around the extraction zone. Maya slowly understood. They're gathering. Varric's expression hardened. Why? Before Maya could answer, their communication unit activated again. Expedition Team 7, rescue shuttle entering atmosphere. ETA 23 minutes. Everyone looked toward the sky. Maya didn't celebrate. She looked back at the holes. 23 minutes, she whispered. Corin stared at her. That's good. Maya nodded slowly. Yes. A deep vibration passed beneath their feet. If they let us have 23 minutes. The ground ahead began to move. The ground ahead began to move. At first it looked like nothing more than loose soil sliding down the edge of the plain, but then the movement spread outward in widening waves. Hundreds of small holes collapsed at once. Dust and fragments of earth rose into the air. The cadets stepped backward. Corin raised his weapon. They're coming up. Instructor Varric looked at his scanner. Multiple life signs. Too many to count. Tarek struggled to stand properly. What do we do? Maya stared at the plain. The extraction zone was only 2 kilometers away. Beyond it, the rescue shuttle would arrive in less than 20 minutes. Between them and safety was a living ecosystem they did not understand. We don't fight them, Maya said. Corin looked at her. Then what? We make them choose somewhere else. How? Maya looked toward the canyon they had just left. Then toward the hills on either side of the plain. She studied the holes, the wind, and the movement of the creatures. Something about the pattern bothered her. They're not surrounding us. Varric looked at the ground. What? Look at the holes. Corin frowned. I see holes. They're concentrated along the edges of the plain. Maya pointed toward the center. Nothing is coming from there. Tarek slowly understood. They're avoiding the middle. Maya nodded. Why? Varric asked. Maya looked at the open plain. I don't know. She activated her scanner and began taking readings. The ground beneath the center was cooler than the surrounding soil. There were no geothermal vents. No chemical anomalies. No visible predators. Something doesn't make sense, she whispered. Corin looked at the approaching creatures. We don't have time for things to make sense. A tremor passed beneath them. The holes closer to the canyon collapsed. Something was forcing the smaller creatures toward the center. Maya suddenly looked back at the forest. The big predator. Varric's expression changed. What about it? It drove them here. Corin looked confused. Why would a predator drive prey toward us? It didn't. Maya pointed toward the opposite side of the plain. It's driving them away from itself. Varric scanned the forest. His display flickered. Then a massive life signature appeared beneath the surface. It was moving toward the plain. Everyone move, Varric ordered. The cadets began running toward the center. Not there, Maya shouted. Varric stopped. Where? Maya pointed toward a rocky rise on the far side. There. Quarren stared at the route. That's farther from extraction. I know. Then why? Maya looked at the ground. Because the creatures are moving away from the predator. If we stay between them, we'll be in the middle of everything. Varric understood. Move. They sprinted toward the rocky rise. Tarek stumbled. Maya grabbed him. Keep going. I am. Faster. I'm trying. Quarren returned and lifted Tarek's other side. We've got him. They reached the rocks just as the ground behind them exploded. The enormous predator emerged from beneath the plane. It was larger than the creature they had seen before, but its body was different. Its armor was covered in pale ridges, and its head was broad and flat. It opened its mouth and released a low vibration that Maya could feel inside her chest. The smaller creatures scattered. Don't shoot, Varric ordered. Nobody needed to be told twice. The predator didn't attack them. It moved across the plain, following the smaller creatures. Maya watched carefully. It's not hunting them. Quarren looked at her. Then what is it doing? Protecting something. The predator suddenly stopped beside a cluster of rocks. It lowered its head and began digging. Maya zoomed her scanner. Beneath the rocks was a large nest-like structure. Several small creatures were inside. Tarek whispered, "It's young." Maya nodded. The little ones weren't running from it. They were running toward the nest, Varric said. Maya looked toward the forest. And something else scared them out. A distant roar answered him. The larger predator turned toward the forest. For several seconds it remained perfectly still. Then another massive shape moved between the trees. It was the shadow they had seen the night before. It was taller than the trees near the edge of the plain, with long limbs and a body that seemed almost impossible to see against the darkness. The first predator charged. The two creatures collided at the forest edge. The impact shook the ground. We move now, Maya said. Varric nodded. The distraction gave them an opportunity, but it didn't make the route safe. They ran toward the extraction zone. The rescue shuttle was already visible through the clouds. Its engines created a deep rumble that echoed across the plain. They see us, Quarren shouted. The shuttle's landing lights flashed. Then the rescue pilot transmitted. Expedition Team 7, we have visual contact. Prepare for immediate extraction. Maya looked at the terrain. The shuttle could not land safely on the uneven ground. Tell them to stay airborne, she said. Varric looked at her. Why? The ground is unstable. He transmitted the warning. Rescue craft, maintain hover. Surface unstable. The pilot answered, understood. Deploying extraction lines. 4 cables dropped from the shuttle. The cadets attached themselves one by one. Tarek went first because of his injury. Quarren helped secure his harness. Maya checked the lock. Ready? Tarek nodded. Ready. The cable pulled him upward. Then another cadet followed. The ground beneath Maya suddenly cracked. She jumped backward. Maya! Quarren shouted. She lost her footing. Her boots slipped into a widening fissure. She grabbed the edge with both hands. Quarren dropped his weapon and reached for her. Give me your hand. Maya stretched upward. I can't reach. Jump. If I jump, I'll fall. Trust me. Maya looked at him. For a fraction of a second, she remembered Earth. Her father had once told her that trusting someone didn't mean ignoring danger. It meant knowing when you couldn't solve a problem alone. She released one hand and reached. Quarren caught her wrist. I've got you. He pulled with all 4 arms. Maya kicked against the rock. The fissure widened. Pull, Quarren shouted. Together they dragged Maya onto solid ground. The extraction cable swung toward them. Maya grabbed it. Go, Quarren said. Together, they attached themselves to the line. The rescue shuttle lifted them into the air just as the plane collapsed behind them. From above, VEYRA-9 looked almost beautiful. Rivers cut through the forests like silver threads. Storm clouds rolled over distant mountains. Lightning flashed across the horizon. Maya watched the planet through the shuttle window as the others received medical treatment. Tarek's wound was stabilized. Quarren sat nearby, exhausted. He looked at Maya. I owe you my life. Maya shook her head. You pulled me out. Because you taught me not to panic. Maya smiled. Then we're even. Instructor Varric entered the medical area. Cadet Reyes. Maya looked up. Sir? The Academy wants a full report. I'll give them one. Varric studied her for a moment. You were correct about several things. Maya waited. But you were also wrong about others. Maya smiled. I know. Varric nodded. That's important. Tarek looked confused. Why? Varric answered before Maya could. Because survival isn't about always being right. It's about recognizing when you're wrong before the mistake becomes fatal. The shuttle climbed into orbit. VEYRA-9 disappeared beneath the clouds. Maya remained at the window until the planet became a distant sphere. She wasn't celebrating. 23 cadets had gone down. All 23 had come back, but several were injured, and their equipment losses had nearly turned the mission into a disaster. They hadn't conquered VEYRA-9. They hadn't defeated its predators. They hadn't proven humans were stronger than aliens or stronger than nature. They had simply survived. 2 weeks later, the cadets returned to the academy. The same auditorium where the mission had been announced was now filled with instructors, cadets, and expedition officers. The recovered mission footage played above the stage. The damaged shelter, the underground predator, the collapsing plateau, the extraction. When the footage ended, Instructor Varric stepped forward. Cadets, what happened on VEYRA-9 will be studied for years. Our environmental models were incomplete. Several assumptions about the ecosystem were incorrect. The expedition succeeded because the team adapted. He paused, but one question has appeared repeatedly in the mission review. The lights turned toward Maya. Why did Cadet Reyes remain calm when the others panicked? Maya immediately regretted being in the front row. A senior instructor asked, Cadet Reyes, what makes humans so comfortable on dangerous worlds? Maya thought about the question. Then she looked at the alien cadets around her. Corin was listening. Tarek was smiling. Maya stood. We aren't comfortable on dangerous worlds. The room became quiet. Humans are afraid of storms. We're afraid of predators. We're afraid of heights, darkness, disease, oceans, fire, and things we don't understand. She paused. Earth didn't make us fearless. She looked toward the holographic image of Earth above the stage. It made us practiced. Someone asked, practiced at what? Maya smiled faintly. Paying attention. Corin leaned back in his seat. Maya continued. On Earth, if you walk through a forest, you learn to notice tracks. You learn to watch the sky. You learn that quiet can mean something. You learn that a river can look beautiful and still kill you. You learn that being stronger than something doesn't mean you should fight it. She looked at Varric. And sometimes you learn all of that barefoot. A few cadets laughed. Maya laughed too. Then Tarek raised one of his hands. Is it true? Maya looked at him. What? That you actually walked across Earth barefoot? Maya nodded. Many times. Tarek shook his head in disbelief. Corin smiled. You humans are insane. Maya sat down. Probably. The auditorium filled with laughter. But Instructor Varric didn't laugh. He looked toward the holographic Earth and then back at the cadets. Perhaps, he said quietly, the galaxy has misunderstood humanity. Maya looked up. Varric continued. We assumed humans survived Earth because they were physically dominant. He paused. After VEYRA-9, I believe the truth is more complicated. Maya said nothing. Varric looked at the entire class. Humans survive because they understand something many advanced civilizations have forgotten. The room waited. A world does not have to be conquered to be survived. The words settled over the auditorium. Maya looked at the Earth hologram again. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds, home. She remembered rain against her face as a child. Mud beneath her feet, cold grass between her toes. Her father's hand guiding her through a forest. Earth had never been gentle. It had never promised safety. It had simply demanded attention. And humans had learned to listen. Maya smiled quietly. Somewhere in the academy, a new generation of cadets was already studying VEYRA-9. They would call it a death world. They would study its predators, its storms, its underground ecosystems, and its dangerous terrain. And perhaps one day, another group would be sent there. But the next time someone asked Maya if she was afraid of Death World missions, she knew exactly what she would say. Of course I'm afraid. She would smile. I just grew up on Earth. And if they asked her how she learned to survive such a dangerous planet, Maya would look down at her boots, remember the grass beneath her bare feet, and answer with the same simple words that had started the entire story. I walked Earth barefoot.